this video I'm going to talk about alternate history, one of my favorite subjects in narration and narrative in general. It's a science fiction subgenre, usually, not always, and I'm gonna expose it to you through an article, two videos with my personal take, and I will conclude with a summary in PowerPoint. I hope you guys enjoy it very much. See you!
Now, let's talk about alternate history. Alternate history is a genre or a subgenre, depending on who you ask, of a particular style of fiction. Usually it's speculative in nature because it speculates on what could have happened, because our history at least went in one direction and not in another. Alternate history is also called Uchronie or Uchronia in France and Italy respectively, which means time that wasn't. By time it wasn't, it's something that didn't happen, of course. Now, it's considered a subgenre of science fiction because some alternate history might involve superior technology, and for that it's classified as a subgenre of science fiction. One of such example would be The Man in the High Castle. Alternate history should not be confused with revisionism, as someone might think. I had an unfortunate time to discover that people collide the two, merge them almost, which usually is not the purpose of alternate history. On the contrary, alternate history it's something that explores the vast possibilities that could have been our own world. The most famous examples, and also obvious, at least in one of them, it's what if Nazis won World War II? Or what if the Confederate States of America still existed and won the War of Secession, or, both could be interpreted as dystopia, no matter how positive it could go in that universe. Usually, alternate history it's not just the scenery, but it's also could deliver a message. In case of The Man in the High Castle, one of the most famous examples, not the first, bear in mind there were others that preceded it, one of which was Bring the Jubilee, about an alternate world where the Confederate States won their war. And there was also many other examples, what if the Byzantine Empire survived, and others. The most famous author is Harry Turtledove, which some of you may know. Now we're gonna talk about a peculiar article which was posted on the section of Culture of the Atlantic by Megan Garber, called Americans Are Living in an Alternate History. The author in question starts pondering about what could have gone better if someone else under the pandemic, starting before with Sliding Doors as a metaphor, which is a romantic comedy, which it's also speculative in nature because it involves two timelines of this character, interpreted by Gwyneth Paltrow. In the first, she discovers her fiance cheating on her, and in the second, she doesn't. Now, she then goes to speculate what could have happened had Hillary Clinton won the presidency. Taking as an example the alternate history, if someone may call it that, of Rodham. Rodham explores the possibility of a world where Hillary Clinton didn't marry Bill Clinton and where Bill Clinton didn't win the presidency. And unfortunately, the novel, the alternate history novel, besides being a bit of tasteless because of the way it's written, it's also, it could be interpreted as borderline fan fiction if one takes into account the life, political life of Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton.
We're back and we're here with Harry Turtledove. Sir, welcome to Fast Forward.
Thank you very much.
This is a unique opportunity for me because although the book Hitler's War, which was your latest novel out, talks about you as the master of alternate history, there's a great deal of space in alternate history. You've done everything from reimagining the outcome and the progression of the war between the North and South in the Civil War, up to almost the present day time. You've also, in the book that's coming out, we're taping in October and this will air in December, you will have a book out that basically posits a separation of a portion of the North American continent into an island that becomes named, the eighth continent, that becomes named Atlantis and is colonized by Europeans, and as well as the Native Americans. So we're not just talking about tweaking something that's already happened. We're literally talking about what if the world were completely different. Now, when you talk about World War II or you talk about the Civil War, what is the biggest concern you have when you're doing your reimagining?
Well, you want to be plausible, you want to be entertaining, and when you're playing with alternate history for things that a lot of people know well, and you're dealing with people who were born into history.
With Harry Turtledove is in occasion of his new book at the time, because many years have passed since then and many more books by him have come out. And this one deals with a question: what if World War II started over Czechoslovakia instead of Danzig? Well, to be more precise, about the Sudetenland, which was a hot question at the time, because that area of Czechoslovakia, nowadays the Czech Republic or simply Czechia, was majority German for the most part. So instead of, in this book, instead of ceding this land, Neville Chamberlain actually backups Czechoslovakia, which is an interesting premise because many have debated about the capabilities or pre-World War II Czech Republic, soon to become protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, before they were annexed by the Munich Agreement, thanks to the appeasement of France and Britain at the time. Harry Turtledove then goes to explain how he makes alternate history, because the first focal point is why he chose multiple characters with, of course, multiple point of views. And the reason was simple, because the scale of the war, in this case, but also in our case, was global, a global war that spanned multiple characters, so multiple scenarios, multiple geographical areas. And he tried to make them interesting and plausible, because plausibility is one of the most focal points of alternate history, 99% of the time. There are also scenarios that are called alien space bats on the alternatehistory.com website, the most famous known website to discuss such topics. And fun, because people want to read something that is indeed fun. One of the other focal points of the interview is how he quit his day job and became a full-time writer, which was Guns of the South, which started with the premise of a friend of his who said that one thing was anachronistic as Robert E. Lee, the general of the Confederacy, with a Uzi. And this book talks about South Afrikaners that go back in time to help Lee win the war of the Confederacy.
I think everyone has talked at one time or another with their friends, if you're a Beatles fan, about how they might have stayed together and how you wish they would have. So what I tried to do is pick a series of what I call breakpoints, where they went in one direction in our timeline, but had they made a slightly different decision, it could have had a cumulative effect. Many people refer to this as the butterfly effect. So I've tried to find places like that where if they'd simply behaved maybe a little differently or even a little better or with a little more compassion toward each other or empathy, they might have been able to keep it going.
What are the biggest challenges they face? Drugs, women, creative roadblocks?
They faced all of these problems, and of course only the Beatles were the Beatles and experienced this insane Beatlemania thing that they had gone through together. At first it bonded them all together, and then later it became kind of a prison. So the challenge for me in writing this book was to try to figure out how they could have worked together to free themselves again so that they could have continued to do what they love to do, which is to play music with their friends. And try to give them a second chance at keeping it together. So the book actually starts while they're still the Beatles in 1968, because that's where I find my first break point where they could have done things just a little bit differently.
What was that break point? Remind me.
In 1968, John and Paul came to New York City to promote the new Apple records that they had just created to manage their business affairs.
This book, it's a bit different. For starters, it's part of a much shorter series, because unfortunately Harry Turtle Dove does long series, sometimes even too long. Bryce Isabel presents his new book in this interview, which, for a nice change of pace in all of alternate history, it doesn't evolve around a catastrophic event or politics or anything like that. Well, indirectly it could be politics if you wish so, considering what you are talking about. Once there is a way, what if the Beatles stay together? And this novel evolves around the premise of breakpoints. Breakpoints are the generally called on the alternatehistory.com website point of divergences, where things got different or went different depending on who you ask. The premise of this book is what a series of events in the Beatles' life as a band went much differently than what we know. The author talks about how much of a powerful force they were, and what if they stayed together. Because there are very few things that were influential as the Beatles. The Beatlemania, a lot of people, fans of the Beatles, belonging to the boomer, if we want to use a neologism, a slang, generation, loved it because there was a reason to love the Beatles. They were not only a powerful musical force, but also a cultural and a social one. So the author treats various points, or breakpoints in this case, which is a term used to describe his duology, the previous one being What If JK Had Lived. And one of these breakpoints is what if for example, Yoko Ono, not only her but all the wives of the Beatles go together. And the author says that he treats her much respectfully, because of course Yoko Ono is still alive. And he points out that the Beatles didn't have just Yoko Ono as a break point in the literal sense. They didn't break up just because there was Yoko Ono there. And Selfie said that, well, Yoko Ono certainly wasn't the witch that everyone described.